See? Knew you'd be walking in no time. The adjustments work perfectly.
I can't believe it. I feel so stable.
It's wonderful.
You know, there's a specific sound a $250,000 car makes when it dies in a neighborhood like West Oakland. It's not a bang or a sputter. It's a soft, expensive sigh, like the machine itself is disappointed to be there. I was under a O for Camry, wrestling with a rusted alternator that had been giving me grief all morning. When I heard it, that low purr of a high-performance engine suddenly choking out, followed by the hiss of steam, and for a second, I just laid there on the creeper, staring at the grease-stained underside of that Toyota, thinking, Lord, don't let that be trouble. But trouble has a way of finding you when you run the only shop for 10 blocks that doesn't overcharge. So I wiped my hands on a rag that was already blacker than the asphalt, slid out, and stood up to see a pristine, pearl-white Bentley Bentayga sitting right in front of my bay doors, looking like a spaceship that had crash-landed in a junkyard. The driver's door opened, and out stepped a woman who looked like she'd been cut from a magazine page and pasted into my gritty reality-sharp white blazer, heels that cost more than my rent, and a face set in a permanent expression of I need to speak to the manager. Her name, I'd learn later, was Elena Sterling, CEO of Other Dynamics, a woman used to bending the world to her will. But right then she was just a stranded motorist in a zip code she'd probably only seen on the news. She didn't look at me. She looked at the steam rising from her hood. Then she marched around to the back passenger door and opened it. And that's when the air in the garage changed, shifting from the smell of old oil and ozone to something heavy, something tragic. She was helping a girl out of the back seat, maybe 19 or 20, pale, beautiful in a fragile sort of way. But what stopped me cold wasn't her face. It was the machinery strapped to her legs, a carbon fiber exoskeleton that looked less like a medical device and more like a cage, blinking with little LED lights, humming with servos that whined every time she tried to move. This was Clara, and getting her from the leather seat to the cracked pavement was an operation. A painful, rigid struggle where her mother hovered, terrified, and the girl just gritted her teeth, her eyes fixed on the middle distance, trying to disassociate from the humiliation of it all. I walked over, tossing the rag onto my workbench, and Elena finally clocked me, her eyes scanning my coveralls, the grease under my fingernails, the scar running through my eyebrow, and dismissing me in a nanosecond. The radiator, she snapped, pointing at the Bentley. It overheated. I have a board meeting in San Francisco in 40 minutes. Fix it. No please, no hello, just an order barked at the help. I can fix a radiator. Ma'am, I said, my voice low, trying to keep the edge off because I could see she was stressed. But that's gonna take an hour to cool down before I can even touch it without losing skin. She let out this sharp, frustrated breath, checking her watch, pacing. But I wasn't looking at her anymore. I was looking at Clara, watching her try to take a step toward the little plastic chair I kept out front for customers. Whir, click, drag, winch. Every step was a battle. I saw the way her hip hitched up, the way she threw her shoulder forward to compensate for the weight of the leg, the way a tiny line of sweat appeared on her upper lip from the sheer exertion of moving 5 feet. I'm a mechanic, born and bred. I see systems, I see leverage, I see torque, and what I was watching wasn't walking. It was fighting physics. Excuse me, I said, stepping past Elena. I don't mean to overstep, but that brace, it's fighting her. Elena stopped pacing, looking at me like I'd just spoken Aramaic. That, she said, ice dripping from every syllable, is the Orion 7. It is the most advanced mobility assistance device in the world. It was designed by the top engineers at Stanford. So unless you have a PhD hidden under those coveralls, I suggest you stick to the car. I don't have a PhD, I said, looking straight at Clara, who had paused, looking at me with a mix of exhaustion and curiosity. But I know that human knees don't pivot on a single axis like a door hinge. That machine is locking her patella at 15 degrees, forcing her hip to swing out to clear the ground. That's why her lower back is screaming right now, isn't it? Clara's eyes went wide. It was the first time she'd really looked at me. How her voice was raspy, unused. How did you know about my back? Because you're leaning 7 degrees to the right to offload the pressure, I said, ignoring Elena's gasp. It's geometry, miss. You can put all the sensors and microchips you want on it, but if the fulcrum is wrong, the machine wins and the body loses. The silence that fell over that garage was heavy enough to crush a truck. Elena looked at her daughter, really looked at her, and for a second, the CEO mask slipped, revealing a terrified mother who had spent millions trying to fix a tragedy she felt responsible for. I learned later it was a car accident, one where she was driving, and she saw the truth in my grease-stained face. "Can you?" Clara started, then stopped, afraid to hope. "Can you adjust it?" "I can do better than adjust it," I said. And I felt the ghost of my brother Malachi standing right next to me, whispering in my ear. Malachi had been a wheelchair user for 10 years after a botched surgery, and I'd spent every dime I had and every spare hour studying biomechanics to try and get him upright. Before an infection took him 2 years ago, I can rebuild the linkage, shift the center of gravity to the hip where it belongs, disengage the knee lock so it swings free on the forward stride using a tension spring instead of a motor. It'll cut the weight in half. Elena laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. "You want to take a $100,000 FDA-approved medical device and hack it apart with a wrench? You're insane. We're leaving." "Clara, get in the car." But Clara didn't move. She stood there, trembling in that metal cage, looking at her mother. "Mom," she said, softly, "it hurts. It always hurts. The doctors say it's normal, but she pointed a shaking finger at me. He sees it. He sees why it hurts. I'll call an Uber," Elena said, reaching for her phone, panic rising in her voice because she was losing control. "Leave the brace," Clara said, her voice hardening into something iron. "Leave it with him. We have the spare wheelchair in the trunk. Give him 2 days. Clara, this is dangerous," Elena hissed. "Living in pain is dangerous." Clara shot back, 2 days, please." And that's how I ended up with a piece of cutting-edge medical technology on my workbench, sitting next to a half-eaten sandwich and a pile of spark plugs. I closed the shop, put a sign on the door saying family emergency. For the next 48 hours, I didn't sleep. My daughter, Jojo, she's 8, going on 30, sat on a stool nearby, doing her homework and watching me work with that intense, silent focus she has. "Is this for the sad lady?" Jojo asked, munching on an apple. "Yeah, baby," I muttered, sparks flying as I took a grinder to the titanium frame. "It's for the sad lady. Are you gonna fix her like you wanted to fix Uncle Malachi?" That question hit me like a punch to the gut. I had to put the grinder down for a minute, blinking back the sting in my eyes. "Yeah, Jojo, just like that. Better than that." I stripped that machine down to its bones. I threw out the battery packs, the sensors, the heavy casing. I raided my scrap pile, finding high-grade aluminum from an old aircraft part I'd been saving, machining a new joint that mimicked the rolling motion of a human knee, rather than the hinge of a robot. I used high-tension springs from a racing suspension setup to create a passive energy return system. Basically, when she stepped down, the spring loaded, and when she lifted, it helped swing her leg forward. Pure physics. No batteries required. But engineering isn't a straight line. It's a jagged mess of failures. The first prototype I finished at 3 a.m. on the second day looked promising. I strapped it to my own leg to test the load bearing, and it snapped under torque, sending a shard of metal flying past my ear and embedding itself in the drywall. If that had been Clara's leg, I broke out in a cold sweat, shaking, wanting to throw the whole thing in the dumpster. I was just a mechanic. Who was I kidding? But then I looked at the wall, at a picture of Malachi smiling in his chair, and I remembered his voice. "Zeke, the world is just machines, man. Bodies, cars, it's all just levers and pulleys. Don't let the white coats scare you." I started over. I realized the problem wasn't the material. It was the balance. The original designers assumed the knee took the load, but the hip drives the walk. I moved the main pivot point up for inches. I reinforced the strut. When Elena and Clara rolled up on Thursday morning, the Bentley was fixed, but the atmosphere was thick with tension. Elena had brought back up a man in a suit who looked like he smelled something bad. Dr. Reese Thorne, the head of research for the company that made the brace. He walked into my shop like he was entering a crime scene. looking at the modified brace on my bench with pure disgust. "This is vandalism," Thorne sneered, poking the stripped-down frame with a manicured finger. "You've removed the safety limiters. You've compromised the structural integrity. Miss Sterling, if your daughter puts this on, I cannot be held responsible for the catastrophic injury that will likely follow. In fact, I'm documenting this for our legal team." Elena looked pale, her hands twisting her purse strap. "Zeke, maybe this was a mistake. Dr. Thorne says Dr. Thorne designed a machine that looks good on a spec sheet," I cut in, my voice calm but hard. "I designed something that walks." I picked up the brace. It weighed 6 pounds now, down from 15. "Clara, it's your call." Clara sat in her wheelchair, looking from the sleek, arrogant doctor to me, a guy with oil in the creases of his palms and bags under his eyes. "Put it on," she whispered. We went to the back room for privacy. I showed her how to strap it in. It was simpler now, intuitive. When we came back out to the main bay, Dr. Thorne had his phone out, recording, probably waiting for the lawsuit footage. "Okay," I said, standing in front of her. "Don't fight it. Don't think about the motor pushing you. Just step, let gravity do the work." Clara gripped the arms of the wheelchair. She pushed up. She stood. There was no whine of servos, no blinking lights, just silence. She wobbled for a second, her brain waiting for the machine to catch her. But then the new hinge engaged, locking softly to support her weight. She took a breath. She lifted her right foot. The spring engaged, swinging the leg forward smoothly, and her heel touched the concrete. One step. Dr. Thorne lowered his phone slightly. She shifted her weight. The hip pivot rotated, absorbing the torque instead of her spine. 2 steps. Her face, which was usually pinched tight in anticipation of pain, went slack. She looked down at her feet, then up at her mother. "Mom," she choked out. "Does it hurt?" Elena asked, stepping forward, her hands hovering. "No," Clara whispered, and then louder, "No, Mom. It just feels like my leg." She took another step, then another, gaining confidence. The rhythmic click-click replaced by the soft scuff of rubber on concrete. She walked the length of the garage, turned around smoothly, without the robotic jerkiness, and walked back. By the time she reached us, she was crying, silent tears tracking through her makeup. Elena let out a sob that sounded like something tearing in half, rushing forward to hug her daughter, burying her face in Clara's neck. For a minute, nobody said anything. It was just the sound of a mother crying and the distant hum of traffic. Then Dr. Thorne cleared his throat. "Well," he said, his face red, trying to salvage his ego, "it's a lucky fluke, but it's unregulated. It's a legal modification of a Class II medical device. You can't let her wear this outside of this shop. The liability." "Get out," Elena said. She didn't look up from her daughter. "Excuse me?" Thorne blinked. Elena turned, and the tears were gone, replaced by the shark-like gaze of a CEO who just found a target. I said, "Get out of this garage, and take your liability with you. If you ever speak to me about sensors again, I will buy your company just to fire you." Thorne stormed out, tires screeching as he peeled away. But as I watched him go, I felt a knot in my stomach. I knew guys like that. I knew systems like that. They don't take humiliation lying down. And I was right. 2 weeks later, the letter came. Not a thank you note, but a thick envelope delivered by a courier. A cease and desist order from the legal department of Orion Kinetics, citing patent infringement, reckless endangerment, and practicing medicine without a license. They weren't just threatening to sue me. They were threatening to take the shop, my home, everything I'd built for JoJo. I sat at my kitchen table that night, the letter shaking in my hands, looking at JoJo sleeping on the couch. I had poked the bear, and now the bear was coming to eat us alive. I thought about calling Elena, telling her I couldn't do it, that I had to take the brace back, undo the work, apologize. I sat there in the dark of my kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator feeling like a countdown. That cease and desist letter sitting on the table like a loaded gun. The legal jargon was dense, designed to intimidate. Words like punitive damages and criminal negligence jumping out at me. I'm a guy who can rebuild a transmission blindfolded, but this was a machine I didn't know how to fix. The fear was a cold weight in my gut, not for me, but for JoJo. If they took the shop, they took our livelihood. If they pushed for criminal charges, what happens to a single black dad in the system? I knew the statistics. I knew the odds. I reached for my phone to call Elena, to tell her I was out, that she needed to bring the brace back so I could destroy it and beg for mercy. But before I could dial, a notification popped up. It was a video link Clara had sent me. I clicked it. It was her, walking on the beach. Send is a nightmare for prosthetic sit shifts. It drags, but there she was, walking near the surf. The wind in her hair, laughing. Actually laughing. The caption just said, "First time in 7 years I've felt the ocean." I put the phone down. I looked at the picture of Malachi on the mantle. He died waiting for permission from insurance companies. Permission from doctors who didn't listen. I couldn't ask Clara to sit back down in that chair. I just couldn't. The next morning, the storm broke. A news van was parked outside my shop when I arrived. Dr. Thorne hadn't just sent a letter. He'd gone on the offensive. He'd given a quote to the local paper calling me a backyard tinkerer, endangering vulnerable patients. The reporter shoved a microphone in my face as I unlocked the gate. "Mr. Vance, do you have a comment on the allegations that you're practicing unlicensed medicine? Are you aware you could be facing jail time?" I looked at the camera, tired, grease already under my nails from the morning prep. "I'm not a doctor," I said, my voice steady. "I'm a mechanic. And when a part is broken, you fix it. That brace was broken. It was hurting her. I just made it work. But the experts built a cage." I cut him off. "I built a key. I went inside and locked the door, but the siege had begun. For 3 days, business dried up. Regulars who'd trusted me for years drove past, looking away. The narrative was spinning out of control. I was reckless. I was a fraud. Elena was radio silent, which scared me the most. I figured her lawyers had told her to cut ties with the liability. On Friday, a black town car pulled up. I thought it was the process servers coming to padlock the doors. I told JoJo to stay in the office and put her headphones on. I walked out to the bay, wiping my hands on a rag, ready to fight or beg. I wasn't sure which, but it wasn't a lawyer. It was Elena, and she wasn't alone. She stepped out, looking fierce, and opened the back door. A small Japanese woman stepped out, older, wearing a tweed jacket and glasses on a chain. "Zeke," Elena said, her voice tight but controlled. "This is Dr. Sato. She's the former dean of biomechanics at MIT and currently runs an independent research lab in Tokyo. We flew her in last night." Double quotes. Dr. Sato didn't say hello. She walked right past me to the workbench where I had the blueprints and the prototype sketches laid out. She put on her glasses and started studying them, humming to herself, tracing the lines of the fulcrum, the tension spring calculations. The silence stretched for 5 minutes, 10. I was sweating. Finally, she looked up, her eyes sharp behind the lenses. "You drive the variable tension pivot ratio in your head." I used a calculator, I mumbled, and I watched how cats jump. They load the energy in the tendon before the release. Dr. Sato looked at Elena. "Reese Thorne is an idiot," she said, her voice crisp. "This isn't malpractice. This is elegant. It's intuitive engineering. The medical industry has been trying to force robotics into walking for 20 years, making it heavy and complex. This man used passive dynamics. He solved the weight distribution problem by ignoring the knee and focusing on the pelvic rotation. It's brilliant." I felt the air rush back into my lungs. "Will you testify to that?" Elena asked. "I will write a paper on it," Sato said, smiling at me. "After I license the patent from Mr. Vance, of course." The courtroom battle well. The court of public opinion battle didn't end there, but the tide turned. Elena didn't just hire lawyers. She went nuclear. She held a press conference right in front of my garage. She put Clara in front of the cameras, wearing the brace, walking back and forth while Dr. Thorne stood in the background, looking like he'd swallowed a lemon. My daughter spent 5 years in agony because Orion Kinetics prioritized profit over physiology. Elena told the cameras, "They sold us a Porsche with square wheels. Zeke Vance put round tires on it. If that's a crime, then arrest me too, because I'm investing $5 million in Vance Mobility. Starting today." The look on Thorne's face was worth every sleepless night. The lawsuit was dropped 3 weeks later. Turns out, Orion didn't want Discovery to reveal that they knew their brace caused back problems, but sold it anyway because the insurance reimbursement was higher for active electronic devices. But the real ending to this story isn't the money or the patent or the new sign above my shop that says Vance and Sterling Biomechanics. It happened about 6 months later. I was in the new facility we bought, the warehouse next door. It's a weird mix of a high-end medical clinic and a grease monkey garage. We got CNC machines next to 3D printers. The smell is a unique blend of antiseptic and WD-40. I was adjusting the strut on a new design for a veteran who'd lost his leg in Afghanistan. When the bell rang, a kid walked in, maybe 12 years old, dragging his left leg, wearing one of those clunky, heavy plastic braces the state insurance pays for. His mom looked tired, worn down by the system, holding a crumpled piece of paper with our address on it. I heard you help people, she said, looking around at the high-tech equipment, clutching her purse like she was afraid we'd charge her for breathing the air. We don't have insurance that covers the fancy stuff. I think we're in the wrong place. I put down my wrench. I looked at the kid, saw the way he was leaning. The pain etched around his eyes, the same look Malachi had. The same look Clara used to have. You're in the right place, ma'am, I said, walking over and kneeling down in front of the kid. Hey man, I'm Zeke. That looks heavy. You want to see if we can make you faster? The kid nodded, eyes wide. No charge, I told the mom, before she could ask. We have a scholarship fund, named after my brother. Seeing that kid walk out of there 3 days later, moving smooth, standing tall, racing JoJo across the parking lot. That's the stuff that heals you. It's funny. I spent half my life thinking I was a failure because I dropped out of engineering school to fix cars when my family fell apart. I thought I was just a grease monkey. But sometimes life puts you in a garage for a reason. Sometimes you have to get your hands dirty to find the design flaw in the world. So, here's the question I want to leave you with, and I want you to be honest in the comments. We live in a world that worships credentials. We trust the diploma on the wall more than the evidence of our own eyes. If you were in Elena's shoes, if your child was hurting and the experts failed, would you trust the guy with the dirt under his fingernails? Would you let the mechanic take a swing at the miracle? Or would you stay in the safe lane and keep driving on a flat tire? Think about it. And if you know someone who's fighting a system that won't listen, share this story with them. Maybe they just need to find their own mechanic. Until next time, keep your tools sharp and your heart open. You never know when a Bentley might break down at your door.